That afternoon, I had just returned from the supermarket, my arms full of grocery bags, when I saw my son, Ethan, standing in the living room. Sunlight poured through the window, casting across his face, but it did nothing to soften the coldness in his eyes. I didn't even have time to ask before he spoke, his voice sharp, steady, and cold as a blade. "Mom, I'm tired of seeing you every day." I froze. My hand tightened around the handles of the bag until they pressed into my skin. "What did you just say?" I asked, hoping I had misheard. Ethan looked straight at me. "I want my own space. You're here too much. My wife feels the same. You should find another place so we can live our own life." Those words hit like a slap in broad daylight. Each syllable echoed in my mind, carving itself deep. This house, I bought it with my own money. The deed is still in my name. I paid for everything, down to the last cent, just so my son could have a good start in life. I moved into the smallest room, lived simply to support them, and now I was suddenly the burden. "Are you serious?" I tried to keep my voice calm, though my chest felt crushed. Ethan hesitated for a second, then said even colder, "I'm just saying what we both think. You know it's true. My wife has never been comfortable with you living here." I stared into his eyes. "So I paid for this house, and now I'm supposed to leave my own home?" He said nothing, no argument, no hint of regret. Outside, a car drove by and faded into the distance. Inside, the only sound left was my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I never imagined the day would come when my son would look at me like I was something disposable, something to be pushed aside when no longer useful. I took a deep breath, set the grocery bags on the table. "All right." I said just one word. No arguing, no pleading. Ethan hesitated, probably expecting me to cry or yell, but I just turned, walked back to my room, closed the door, leaned against the cold wall, and slid to the floor. The shock hadn't passed yet. I remembered the day I handed him the keys to this house, his face bright with joy, and his promise, "Mom, you'll always have a place here." Now that promise was nothing more than a shattered memory. I heard Ethan in the living room, talking on the phone, his tone light, relieved like he had just freed himself from a burden. Then it hit me. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It had been planned. My chest tightened, but somewhere beneath the pain, another thought began to form. If they wanted me gone, I would go, but not empty-handed. I sat there, listening to the ticking of the clock, every beat like a hammer striking truth into place. If Ethan had made his choice, then I would make mine. No tears, no begging. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Martha, my best friend since my years working at the town library. I answered, trying to sound normal. "Catherine, are you free?" "This afternoon. I just baked your favorite apple pie." I smiled faintly. "I might stop by, but I need your help with something first." 30 minutes later, I stepped out of my room carrying a small bag. Ethan looked up, frowning. "Where are you going?" "Out for a bit." "Don't wait for me." My answer was short. He started to say something, but his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then ignored me completely, as if I had ceased to exist. I met Martha at a cafe near the bus station. When I told her everything, her face darkened. "He said that in the house you bought?" I nodded. "I think it's time to go, but I'm not leaving them anything valuable." Martha rested her chin on her hand, eyes gleaming slyly. "You're planning to sell the house?" "Not just sell," I said. "Sell fast, quietly, before they even realize what's happening. They think I'll leave quietly, I continued, but I'm going to take back everything before I disappear. The plan began that very night. Martha introduced me to a broker named Mr. Jameson, who had once helped her with an inheritance issue. He agreed to meet privately, no public listings. Under the warm yellow glow of his desk lamp, we discussed the details. You want to sell the entire property? The house is under your name, correct? He asked. All documents are legally mine, I said firmly. Mr. Jameson smiled. Then it's simple. I have a few clients ready to pay cash. If you agree, we can close in less than a week. A week just short enough for Ethan and his wife not to notice. I imagined them coming home one day to discover the house was no longer theirs. Strangely, that thought brought me peace. When I returned home, Ethan was gone. The living room was silent. I looked around at every item I had chosen, every framed photo on the wall. Soon, none of it would belong to them. I turned on my computer and sent a message to Mr. Jameson. Start tomorrow. Absolute discretion. When I hit send, my hands were steady. I was no longer the silent, submissive woman in this house. I was leaving, but this time, on my own terms, and with everything that was mine. The next morning, autumn light filtered through the curtains, bathing the kitchen in gold. I brewed a pot of strong coffee, poured it into a white porcelain cup, sat down, and opened my old leather notebook. Page after page was filled with numbers, dates, lists of things I'd bought for the house, an Italian sofa, Japanese knives, a dishwasher installed last year. I marked which items I could take or sell separately. Each red mark was both a memory and an asset. At 9 a.m., Mr. Jameson called. Mrs. Miller, I found a young couple interested in buying in your area. They're ready to pay cash but would like to see the house soon. This afternoon? I asked. Perfect, he said. Would you like them to meet the current residents? I paused. I'll make sure the porter house is empty. I texted Ethan. I have guests coming this afternoon. Don't come home early. His reply came quickly. Whatever. Just 2 words, but they told me everything. In his eyes, I no longer mattered. By noon, I began packing. The valuable items went into labeled cardboard boxes. I loaded them into Martha's car parked out front. By 3 p.m., the young couple arrived with Mr. Jameson. They were polite, dressed simply, their eyes bright with hope. They didn't know the story behind this house, they just saw a warm, well-kept home full of potential. I showed them around, describing each room as calmly as any professional agent, though inside, I felt both relieved and bittersweet. We love it, the wife said, turning to her husband. He nodded. If you agree, we can put down a deposit right now. I glanced at Mr. Jameson. He nodded, confirming everything was in order. After they left, I locked the door and stood in the center of the living room. This place had witnessed too many things I wanted to forget. Silent dinners, sharp remarks, and the moment Ethan told me to disappear. That night, I stayed not because I had to, but because I chose to say goodbye on my own terms. On the kitchen table lay the deposit contract, neatly signed. Everything was in motion. I sat by the living room window, watching the streetlights flicker through the branches outside. In my hand, a cup of hot tea steamed softly, like the thoughts swirling in my head. My phone buzzed a text from Ethan. Mom, can you watch Sophie tomorrow? Amelia wants to go out all day. I smiled faintly, not from joy. I loved my granddaughter dearly, But Ethan's tone reminded me that, to them, I was just free childcare. I replied, "No, I'm busy." Just 2 words, but I knew he'd read them more than once. I rarely told him no. The next morning, I woke early. Mist hung over the yard, dew glistening on the grass. I made coffee and resumed packing. The sound of packing tape tearing across boxes was rhythmic, like cutting through every lingering tie. Around 10 a.m., Martha arrived. Her eyes scanned the growing stack of boxes. "That was fast," she said. "I want everything done before they even notice." I handed her a list. "This goes to storage, the rest to the auction house." Martha helped load the boxes into the rented moving truck. The driver, a quiet young man, worked efficiently. I had prepaid 6 months of storage, enough time to settle somewhere new. That afternoon, Mr. Jameson called. "Mrs. Miller, the buyers have wired the deposit. I'll prepare the final contract for signing on Friday." I looked at the calendar. Friday only 3 days away. 3 days to finish everything. 3 days left in this house. That night, Ethan and Amelia hadn't returned yet. I ate a bowl of chicken soup with bread in silence. Strangely, I didn't feel lonely. Near 9 p.m., they finally came home. I was still at the table reading. Amelia glanced at the boxes but said nothing, likely assuming I was just decluttering. Ethan scrolled through his phone. "Remember to watch Sophie tomorrow," Amelia said, her tone commanding. I closed the book and looked her in the eye. "I already told Ethan. I'm busy." She raised her eyebrows, about to argue, but stopped, maybe surprised by how calm and firm my voice was. When they went upstairs, I looked around the house again. Everything was slowly detaching from me, becoming the past. I knew that by Friday, I would leave not as someone thrown out, but as someone who chose to walk away. Thursday morning, I got an unexpected call from my old attorney, Mr. Harris, who had helped me buy this house. His tone was serious. "Catherine, I just got word from a local bank. Someone's trying to use your house as collateral for a large loan. Do you know anything about that?" My grip on the phone tightened. "No. Who is it, Mr. Harris?" He sighed. "The application was filed under Ethan and Amelia's names. But the issue is," he paused, "it includes a power of attorney document with your signature on it." I closed my eyes. Not surprised, but the sting of betrayal burned deep. "Harris, I never signed any power of attorney for them. That's a forgery." "I thought so too," he said quietly. "Can you file an immediate freeze and legal verification?" I asked. "Of course. I'll move fast. Send me your verified signature sample." When the call ended, I sat frozen. The house wasn't even sold yet, and they were already trying to mortgage it behind my back. Clearly, me leaving wasn't enough. They wanted to drain me further. By noon, I called Mr. Jameson and explained briefly. His voice was calm. "Don't worry, Catherine. Once the sale is complete, any pending mortgage applications become invalid. I'll make sure your transaction is prioritized." That afternoon, I continued packing. Each sealed box felt like a final box, period at the end of a long sentence. Martha came back, carrying 2 bags of food and a cup of coffee. "Harris told me everything," she said. "You're doing the right thing selling fast. If you hesitate, they'll find another way to tie you down." That evening, Ethan came home earlier than usual. I was in the kitchen when the door opened. He stepped in, eyes fixed on the boxes piled high. "Mom, are you I met his gaze, hesitated for a moment, then said, "Yes." Ethan bit his lip. "You don't have to," I interrupted. "No need to explain. It's decided." He fell silent, unease flickering in his eyes. I didn't ask anything more, not because I didn't care, but because there was nothing left to say. When he went upstairs, I opened my old leather notebook and wrote one line. Tomorrow, sign the sale contract. Tomorrow, this house would no longer belong to me or to them. To me, that wasn't loss. It was freedom. The next morning, I woke with a mix of anticipation and caution. Today was the day to sign the papers. But before I got out of bed, an unfamiliar email appeared in my inbox. That morning, Ethan's lawyer tried to block the sale by email, but Mr. Jameson quickly confirmed everything was legal, so we moved ahead without delay. I decided not to mention the signing that evening. The fewer people who knew, the safer it would be. That afternoon, I drove to Mr. Jameson's office. The sky was clear but cold. On the conference table, the documents were neatly arranged. Mr. Jameson and Attorney Harris were both present. "You just need to sign here, here, and here," Harris said, pointing to each page. The pen glided smoothly over the paper. Each signature felt like cutting another invisible chain. When I finished, I set the pen down and exhaled. Mr. Jameson gathered the documents carefully, nodded. "It's done. The payment will be transferred to your new account within 24 hours. It's at a different bank, and only you have access." On the way home, I stopped by a small roadside store and bought a new suitcase, not a large one, but enough to hold what I needed for the next chapter of my life. I didn't know where I was going yet, only that I wouldn't leave behind a trail that could be easily followed. When I got home, Ethan and Amelia were already there. Amelia was sitting on the sofa, eyes fixed on her phone. Ethan leaned against the kitchen doorway, watching me with suspicion. "Where were you all day, Mom?" he asked. I took off my coat and hung it on the rack, just taking care of some personal matters. Amelia spoke up, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "I hope those personal matters don't affect this family." I looked straight at her and smiled faintly. "This family hurts itself, Amelia." She froze for a second, then looked away. That night, I locked my bedroom door and placed the new suitcase neatly at the foot of my bed. Only one thought remained in my mind. Tomorrow I'll leave, and when they realize it, it'll be too late. Saturday morning, I had just poured myself a cup of coffee when I heard loud pounding at the door. It wasn't polite knocking, it was forceful, almost as if someone wanted to break it down. I opened the door and saw two police officers, a man and a woman, standing on the porch. "Mrs. Catherine Miller?" the man asked. "Yes, that's me." He raised a document. "We have a search warrant for this house, requested by the complainant, Mr. Ethan Miller. He claims you're concealing joint assets." I was calmer than they expected. "Joint assets? This house is in my name, it's entirely mine. Please, come in. But you won't find anything illegal to hold me for." They stepped inside and began checking each room. Ethan and Amelia came rushing down from upstairs. Amelia was still in her pajamas, hair a mess, but her eyes sparkled with anticipation, as if she couldn't wait to see me in handcuffs. "Do you really think you can sell the house without asking us first?" Amelia spat out each word. I looked at her the way one looks at a child caught stealing cookies. "Not think, no. And I already did." Ethan stepped forward, raising his voice. "This is a family home. You can't destroy everything just because you're angry." I laughed. a sharp sound that even startled me. Family? What kind of family plans loans behind my back, forges power of attorney documents, and hires lawyers to block me? The female officer stepped in, her tone firm. Ma'am, all documents confirm that this property belongs solely to Mrs. Miller. The warrant authorizes only a search, not seizure. There's no sign of a crime, so we'll be leaving. When they left, Amelia's face went pale, and Ethan pressed his lips together, speechless. I walked to the dining table, took a thick envelope from my jacket, and placed it down. This is a copy of the house sale contract I signed yesterday. The transaction is complete. The money is somewhere you'll never reach. Amelia lunged forward to grab the envelope, but I pulled it back. No, this one's mine. You'll receive the official documents from the lawyer in a few days. From now on, you have exactly 4 days to find somewhere else to live. The room fell into heavy silence. No more shouting, no more police, only the weight of truth. Ethan looked at me with a mix of fear and disbelief. Amelia's fists clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. I took a sip of coffee and spoke slowly. I told you, when you finally understand, it'll be too late. Sunday morning, I was packing a few more boxes when I heard a loud crash downstairs. I hurried down and froze. Ethan and Amelia were tearing through the living room drawers open, papers scattered everywhere. "What are you two doing?" I shouted, my voice louder than I expected. Amelia looked up, eyes sharp as blades. "Looking for the sale, papers. You had no right to do that. If we find them, we'll cancel the transaction." I walked straight over and stood in front of the drawer she had just opened. "Touch one more thing that's mine, and I'll call the police right now." Ethan grabbed a stack of papers, but I snatched them from his hand. The pages flew through the air. "That's my medical record." "How far are you planning to go?" "Stop pretending, Mom," Ethan growled. "You've changed. You don't put family first anymore. Now you only think about yourself." I let out a dry laugh. "Think about myself? After all the years I've worked nonstop, paid debts, bought this house for you, took care of your kids, and endured your wife's constant mockery in silence? If this is the first time I've thought about myself, then yes, it's long overdue." Amelia stepped forward, pointing a finger in my face. "We're not leaving. You can't throw us out." I took a step closer, my voice cold as ice. "I'm not throwing you out. The buyer will. And when the police come to assist them, don't expect me to intervene." Ethan's face turned red, his hand clenched into a fist. I saw the fire in his eyes, but he didn't dare move, perhaps because he knew that if he crossed the line, this would no longer be a family matter. "I've had enough," I said clearly. "You've grown used to my silence, but silence doesn't mean consent." Amelia scoffed, but I raised my voice above hers. "In 4 days, I'll hand the keys to the new owner. If you're still here by then, they'll call the police, and I'll stand with them." Both of them froze, unable to respond. I bent down, gathered the papers, shoved them back into the drawer, and slammed it shut so hard the whole room shook. "If you touch my things again," I said coldly, "there won't be another warning." I went upstairs, leaving them amid the chaos and the truth they couldn't change. That afternoon, I decided to step out for a few hours to clear my head. I went to a small cafe downtown, chose a quiet corner, ordered a cappuccino, and opened my book. I had barely read a few pages when my phone started vibrating nonstop. The first message was from my neighbor across the street, Mrs. Peterson. "Catherine, what's going on at your house? I saw a moving truck parked out front. They're taking things out. I called her immediately. Can you explain? 2 young men. Emilia's giving them orders. They're moving a large cabinet and the dining table. I thought you were moving. I gripped my phone. No, that's my stuff. Without another word, I rushed out of the cafe and drove straight home. The scene made my blood boil. The truck was open, already filled with furniture, most of it things I planned to take with me. Emilia stood in the yard, on the phone, pointing for the men to continue. Ethan was nowhere to be seen. I slammed the brakes and the car door so hard that everyone turned to look. "Put everything down!" I yelled. My voice echoed across the yard. Emilia frowned. "Mom, I'm just helping you pack faster. You've been so busy." I walked up to the truck and stood directly in front of it. "This is my property. If you move one more thing out of this house, I'll call the police right now." The 2 men looked at each other, then set the furniture down. Clearly, they didn't want any trouble. Emilia came closer, lowering her voice but dripping with venom. "You're overreacting. We have rights too." I pulled out my phone and dialed the police. "Your rights end at this door, and this house won't be yours much longer." When she realized I was speaking to the police, Emilia turned away, muttering curses. The truck drove off within minutes, leaving furniture scattered across the front yard. I stood there, heart still pounding. Part of me wanted to cry out of sheer rage, but clarity was stronger. I understood this was proof they were willing to break the law to get what they wanted. That night, I sent all the photos and Mrs. Peterson's statement to Attorney Harris. His reply was short. "Let them dig their own grave. It'll make the case easier." I closed the email, looked around the messy room, and told myself, 3 more days, then it's all over. The next morning, Harris's office called unusually early. His voice was heavy. "Catherine, you need to know this. Last night, Ethan contacted another agency, claiming you're mentally incompetent, and requested they halt the sale." I sat upright, my heart pounding. Mentally incompetent? Based on what? They submitted a copy of a psychiatric evaluation, but the doctor's signature is fake. I called the clinic listed, and they confirmed they've never treated you. I laughed bitterly, though anger burned inside me. "They're desperate." "Yes," Harris said, "but this is serious. If we don't act fast, they could delay the sale. I recommend you come to my office today to sign an official rebuttal, along with a medical certificate." I agreed immediately and called my personal doctor, Dr. Taylor, who had treated me for over 10 years. Within an hour, I had an official mental health certificate declaring me completely fit, signed and sealed in red ink. On the drive to Harris's office, I thought about every step Ethan and Emilia had taken falsifying documents, breaking into my home, trying to steal, and now fabricating a story about my sanity to strip away my rights. Every act was another knife, but also another rope tightening around their own necks. Harris already had the papers ready. "We'll file the rebuttal today," he said. "And I'll also request a formal investigation into the falsified medical records. If intent to defraud is proven, they'll face criminal charges." I signed each page with a firm stroke. "Harris, I want to see this through. No more concessions." He nodded. "Understood." When I got home, I saw Ethan sitting on the porch, phone in hand, avoiding eye contact. Emilia wasn't there. I walked past him, hearing him mutter, "Mom, this is going too far." I turned to him. "Too far?" The moment you decided to deceive me, it already went too far. There's no turning back now." He opened his mouth to speak, but I'd already stepped inside and closed the door. There was no room left for pity. That afternoon, Harris emailed me. "The court has accepted the rebuttal. The house sale will proceed as planned. The forgery investigation begins this week." Reading that, I leaned back in my chair and truly smiled. Only 2 days left. Monday morning, I was checking my packing list when the doorbell rang. On the porch stood a woman in a dark suit holding a briefcase. "Mrs. Catherine Miller?" "Yes, that's me. I'm a social worker from the Department of Adult Protective Services. We received a report suggesting you might be a victim of financial abuse and require urgent intervention." I frowned. "A report from whom?" "That information is confidential," she replied, her voice professional. "But I need to ask you a few questions and may have to review your living conditions." I understood immediately Ethan or Amelia again, pretending to be concerned just to stall the house sale. "Come in," I said evenly. She opened her notebook and began asking about my income, bank accounts, and health. I answered clearly, handing her Dr. Taylor's medical certificate and a statement of my new bank account. She frowned. "That's odd. The report described you as elderly and frail, unable to manage your finances, and coerced into signing documents." I let out a short laugh, though there was nothing funny about it. "Seems they forgot that I initiated the house sale myself and signed everything in front of witnesses." When she reviewed the sale contract and supporting documents, her expression softened. "It's clear someone's trying to manipulate the system to cause you trouble. I'll close this case today. If they submit another false report, it'll be considered a criminal offense." I nodded, thanked her, and saw her out. My chest burned with anger, but also relief. Another scheme exposed. That afternoon, Martha arrived with a bag of warm pastries. When I told her what had happened, her eyes widened. "Unbelievable. Just 2 more days, Catherine, hang in there." Together, we organized the last boxes. The suitcase was ready, papers and contracts locked inside the portable safe. As night fell, the streetlights cast their glow into the empty living room. I looked around the faded walls, the bare nails where pictures once hung. Nothing tied me to this place anymore. I whispered, 48 more hours, then it'll all be over." And I knew that ending wouldn't be anything like what Ethan and Amelia imagined. The next morning, I received an email from Mr. Jameson titled, "Change in Delivery Date." The message was brief. The buyers wish to take possession a day earlier, meaning we'll finalize all paperwork this afternoon. If you agree, I'll handle everything. I reread it to be sure. This afternoon, meaning Ethan and Amelia had less than 10 hours before losing all claim to the house. I called him immediately. "I agree. Do it as fast as possible and keep it discreet." He chuckled softly. "Understood. I'll bring the documents by at 3 p.m. I stood in the kitchen, feeling a surge of energy. I was going to leave earlier than planned, and they wouldn't have time to react. By noon, Ethan and Amelia still hadn't returned. I called the moving company and asked them to come that same day. Martha came over to help supervise. We worked non-stop. The boxes were neatly stacked, the suitcases sealed, and the portable safe placed by the door. Around 2 p.m., I heard a car pull into the driveway. Amelia stepped out, smiling until she saw the moving truck parked in front of the house. Her smile vanished instantly. "What's going on? "What are you doing, Mom?" I didn't answer right away, just kept signing papers with the movers. Ethan got out of the car, frowning. "You said there were still 2 days left." I looked him straight in the eye. "The plan changed. I'm handing over the house this afternoon." Amelia froze. "No, you can't." "I can. And I already did." I cut her off, my voice cold as ice. The buyers wanted to move in early, and I agreed. "As of 4 p.m. today, this is no longer your house." Ethan stepped forward, angry. "You did this just to humiliate us." I smiled faintly. "No, this is simply the result of the choices you made." At exactly 3 p.m., Mr. Jameson arrived. We signed the final documents in the living room, with Martha and the movers as witnesses. When I set my pen down, he confirmed, "The transaction is complete. The new owners will arrive to collect the keys in 1 hour." I put the contract in my handbag and turned to Ethan and Amelia. "I'll be gone before they arrive. You should do the same." Amelia opened her mouth to argue but said nothing. Ethan stood still, eyes fixed on the floor. I walked outside with Martha, suitcase in hand. The air felt cool and liberating. That afternoon, everything would end on my terms. As we were loading the suitcase into the car, a black SUV sped into the driveway and stopped abruptly. The doors swung open, and 2 men in suits stepped out, followed by a stern-looking middle-aged woman. She walked up and pulled a stack of papers from her bag. "Mrs. Catherine Miller? I'm the attorney representing Mr. Ethan Miller and Mrs. Amelia Miller. We're here to deliver a court-issued order to temporarily halt the property transfer." I heard every word clearly, without fear. "On what grounds?" "My clients claim that you sold the house for less than its market value, to conceal joint assets, thus violating their inheritance rights." I let out a quiet laugh. "This house isn't joint property, and they have no inheritance rights while I'm still alive." "That order won't last 24 hours. Martha stepped forward, her tone sharp. "They're just stalling, and you know it." One of the men demanded that I stop the move until the court reviewed the case. I looked at them, then at Mr. Jameson, who had just stepped out of the house with a briefcase. He raised an eyebrow. "I filed all legal ownership documents with the court this morning. This order is based on false information. I'll call the judge right now." While he was on the phone, I turned on the recorder on my cell. "Please repeat the full content of the allegation for the record." Ethan's lawyer hesitated, but eventually read the entire statement aloud. Her voice was captured word for word. A few minutes later, Jameson returned with a cold smile. The judge reviewed it. "The order has been canceled immediately. I suggest you all leave before the police arrive to assist the new owners." The lawyer's face stiffened. She stuffed the papers back into her bag and left without another word. The 2 men followed, clearly defeated. Amelia, who had been standing on the porch the whole time, suddenly stepped forward and shouted, "You'll pay for betraying us, Mom." I looked her in the eye, my voice steady and low. "No, Amelia, you'll pay for mistaking my kindness for weakness." Less than an hour later, the new owner's car pulled into the driveway. They shook my hand, took the keys, and stepped inside. Ethan and Amelia stood frozen, as if unable to accept that it was truly over. Martha and I got into the car. As we drove through the gate, I glanced at the rearview mirror and saw them still standing there, 2 lost figures on the porch of a house that no longer belonged to them. I knew I had won, and I had done it with dignity. Not 10 minutes after leaving the neighborhood, my phone rang. A strange number. I hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Miller?" a deep male voice said. "This is Detective Monroe from the police department. I need you to come to the station this afternoon regarding an ongoing investigation." I frowned. "What kind of investigation?" "A complaint was filed alleging that you removed personal property belonging to Mr. Ethan and Mrs. Amelia Miller during the move. We need your statement." I let out a dry laugh, unable to hide my sarcasm. "They're persistent, aren't they? Still, we need an official statement as soon as possible." Martha looked at me as I hung up. "Another trick?" "Yes, but I won't just defend myself," I said. Before going to the station, we stopped by the storage unit. I retrieved the boxes I had prepared. Receipts, invoices, photos of every item in the house before the move, signed sales records, and bank statements. At the station, Detective Monroe welcomed me into a small office. He opened a thin file. "Mrs. Miller, here's a list of the items the plaintiffs claim you took unlawfully. One sofa set, several framed paintings, a coffee machine, and a portable safe." I calmly laid out the documents and photos on the table. "Here's the receipt for the sofa set from the furniture store, dated 2018, under my name. Here's the receipt for the paintings from an art exhibition, also under my name. The coffee machine was a Christmas gift I bought for myself last year. And here's the warranty for the safe, along with my credit card statement proving the purchase." Monroe examined each paper, his expression shifting from suspicion to respect. "You've prepared thoroughly. I knew they'd try everything, so I left no loose ends." After about 30 minutes, he closed the file. "I'll note in my report that this claim is baseless. If you wish, you can countersue for false accusations." I smiled faintly. "I'll think about it. But trust me, Detective, I don't forget." As I left the station, every step felt lighter. Not just because they had failed again, but because I understood something. Every blow they threw only made me stronger. That afternoon, the golden sunlight stretched across the road ahead and behind me. There was no trace of the old house. That night, in my new apartment, the soft yellow light glowed across the empty table. The quiet was so deep I could hear the clock ticking. Though almost everything was settled, my heart still felt heavy. The phone rang. It was Harris. His voice was serious. He told me the investigator had caught Amelia trying to open yet another line of credit in my name, using forged documents the bank had already rejected. I closed my eyes and said nothing. Part of me wasn't even surprised anymore, yet the betrayal still felt suffocating. "Thank you, Harris. I'll decide what to do next." After hanging up, I stepped onto the balcony. The night was quiet, the air cool. Across the street, warm lights glowed behind windows, families gathered around dinner tables, laughter, the soft clinking of dishes. Simple sounds of belonging that no longer included me. I leaned on the railing and let the memories flood in. Family dinners, Ethan's laughter as a child, the proud look in Richard's eyes, my husband, each time we overcame hardship. Now they were only distant echoes. Back inside, I opened the small wooden box I always carried. Inside were old photos. Ethan with messy hair laughing beside his treehouse, a Christmas picture of all of us in red sweaters, and a letter from Richard, the ink faded by time. I ran my fingers over each item, holding what felt like an entire life, a life I had given everything to, only to be left with this emptiness. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think it's over, Mom?" "It's not." I knew instantly it was Amelia, but I didn't open it again. I had no strength left for anger or sorrow, just a quiet emptiness settling over me like fog. I set the phone down and sat in the dark. Maybe I had won, but I had lost more than just a house. Perhaps victory meant the end of every illusion I'd ever had about family. Before going to bed, I placed the wooden box back in the drawer. Outside, the city hummed on, alive and unaware. I whispered to myself, "Tomorrow will be different at least. I have to believe it will." The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, warmer and clearer than it had been in months. I brewed a cup of black coffee, no sugar, no cream, pure and strong, just like how I felt. I opened the drawer and took out the wooden box. Inside were the photos, the letter, and the old house key. I looked at them one last time. The ache in my chest was gone. They were memories, but they no longer had power over me. I placed them all into an envelope, sealed it, and sent it to storage with the remaining boxes. Memories, like possessions, belong in a safe place somewhere. No one can violate them. The phone rang. It was Martha. "Catherine, what's your plan for today?" "I'm closing the old bank account, cutting off every last tie." My voice felt light. Martha chuckled. "I'll drive you. Let's call it your official goodbye." We went to the bank, where I requested to transfer all the funds to my new account, completely separate. The clerk asked if I wanted to keep the old one. I simply shook my head. Signing the closure papers felt like shutting the door on an old, creaking house that finally got its peace. By noon, I stopped by Harris's office. He handed me a folder, complete legal documentation, securing all my assets, ensuring Ethan and Amelia could never touch them again. "Everything's safe now, Catherine," he said. For the first time, I truly believed him. Leaving the office, Martha and I had lunch at a small lakeside restaurant. The breeze carried the scent of fresh water, sunlight shimmering over the calm surface. I realized I was sitting upright, no longer shrinking, as if waiting for an unseen blow. When I returned to the apartment, I stood on the balcony, watching traffic, pedestrians, children laughing in the nearby park. Life went on, and so would I. This time, for myself. I took a deep breath, relaxed my shoulders, and smiled a genuine smile. Not because I had gotten revenge, but because I had saved myself. They no longer had any power over my life. That afternoon, I organized my desk, opened a blank notebook, and wrote the first line, "A new beginning." I knew, from that moment on, every day would be a story written by me, no one else holding the pen. A week later, my life looked completely different. No more heavy mornings or angry footsteps on the stairs. Instead, there were sparrows chirping outside my window and the smell of coffee filling my tidy kitchen. I began reclaiming the things I'd once abandoned. Each morning, I took a walk through the park where the maple leaves had turned gold and red. Every step felt lighter, free of the dread of returning to that cold house. I realized I had spent years living like a guest in my own life. Now, I was finally its owner. One Tuesday afternoon, I joined a pottery class at the art center. Sitting at the wheel, my hands shaping the soft clay, I felt as though I was molding my life anew. There were a few newcomers in the class. We chatted easily, like old friends. No one asked about my past, and I didn't have to explain. There, I was just Catherine, a woman learning how to create something beautiful. Martha visited often, bringing cheerful stories from her volunteer group. One day, she invited me to join their flower planting team by the lake. We dug our hands into the soil, planting one bloom after another amid bursts of laughter. I realized it had been a long time since I'd laughed freely, not out of irony or defiance, but from genuine joy. At night, I sat by the window reading or writing in my journal, noting small things I was grateful for. A warm cup of tea on a rainy day, a friendly hello from the doorman, or the golden sunset shimmering over the lake. Without fear, even the simplest moments became precious. One weekend, I invited a few new neighbors over for dinner. We shared a meal, swapped stories, and filled the apartment with laughter. Looking around the table, I finally understood happiness isn't something earned through suffering. True happiness is feeling safe, being yourself, and being surrounded by those who respect you. Before going to bed, I stepped out onto the balcony, gazing at the city lights twinkling below. Peace settled in my heart like still water. I whispered to myself, I've reclaimed my life, and this time, it's entirely mine. That feeling I knew for certain was what real happiness meant. This story reminds me that a parent's love and sacrifice should never be treated as an endless obligation, especially when family turns into manipulation and pain. Leaving isn't running away, it's protecting your dignity and peace. Sometimes, loving yourself is the only way to keep living and a wake-up call for others. Love can only last when it's nurtured with respect, not when it's taken for granted. And what about you? Where do you think the line lies between sacrifice and being taken advantage of in family relationships? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be the comfort someone else needs. And if you'd like to keep listening to journeys of courage and healing, stay with the channel, and let's keep exploring how to love without losing ourselves.